Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at the second part of a list tutorial I started. It's already on the site there. If you haven't got any idea what lists are, what I would suggest you do is you go and look at the list 1 programming tutorial I have on the YouTube channel, and then once you've done that, once you understand what is contained in that, come back and have a look at this, because this is the second step. It's a little bit more advanced now. So what are we going to be doing with this? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using two lists, and we're going to be using the positions of the items in those lists to actually print out a name and then a high score. So I'm going to write two lists now. One of them is going to contain just strings, and the other one is going to contain just integers. So I'm going to cut back to here in a second when I'm done. Okay, so I have just written out two lists. So my top one here just contains strings, and my one underneath it contains the scores. Now I'm basing this on the assumption that this name is related to this score. So we can say that Emma scored 101, Lee scored 15, Joe scored 25, and Adam scored 100. So their positions will be the same. So Emma's position here is 0, and her score is also 0. Her score position is 0. Lee's position is 1, and the score position is also 1. Joe's position is 2. Her score position is 2. Adam's position is 3. His score position is 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a for loop now to print out the name followed by their score. So we looked at this in a previous episode. I'm going to go through it again just quickly for you. So for x in range, len name. So what this is doing here, just in case you couldn't remember this last bit here, what this is actually looking at, I'm just going to show you how a range loop normally looks. So a range loop normally looks like this. So you have x as the counter. Every time the loop completes, it adds 1 to this. So this will start at 0, then go 1, 2, 3, depending on how many times round the loop goes. And then in these brackets at the end here, you would put a number, which is how many times you want the loop to complete. We want the loop to complete for as many items are on the list. So in order to do that, we need to look at the length of the list. So we use the len. So this will look at the length of something, and we just put the what we want it to look at. So we want the length of name. We could also use score, but we'll just use name as the top one. This will then return a number. It will see that there are 4 positions, so it will put 4 in here. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to print name x scored and then their score x. So this last part here, this is just going to, depending on how far around the loop we are, will depend on which name is picked. So in the first pass round, this is at basically 0, so it will find name 0, scored, score 0, so it will print Emma scored 101. When it then passes back round, we add 1 to this, so then it is name 1, scored, score 1. So name 1 is Lee, because it's at position 1. Scored 15, because that's at position 1, 0, 1. So let's have a look how that looks now. There we go. So we have our name and our scores all coming up one at a time there. Now, what we're going to do finally now is we're going to look inside this. I'm going to look inside these two lists, and we're going to find the highest score. Now the highest score is going to have the same position as the person who scored it. So we can see just from looking at this list that the highest score is at position 0, and the highest scorer then is Emma, also at position 0. But obviously if I add more names onto this later on at a later date, I still need the program to be able to look through the list and find the new highest score and the new person who owns that highest score. So what I need to be able to do is I need to find the position of the highest score, and using that position I can then print out the name because it will be in the same position, and I'm going to use index to find that position. So I'm going to call the variable index as well, but this piece of programming, score.index, index finds the position of something. So I'm telling Python I want to find the position of something stored in the score list, okay? And I now need to basically find it. I need to tell Python what I want to find. Well, I want to find the maximum score. So in my parameters here, if I wanted to search for a name or something like that, I could put a string in. Or if I wanted to search for a specific score, I could put in a specific score. So like 15, I want to know where 15 is. I just type in 15 there, and it will tell me 15 is stored at position 1. I want it to find the max score all the time. So I use the max function, and I say where I want you to look. I want Python to look in score, and a bracket and a bracket there. Yeah, that should be fine. So what this is doing is it's finding the maximum score, which is 101 in this case, and it's finding the position of it, which is 0. Let's just print index just to make sure it's working. The index, we're going to print this out here because it should say 0 when it prints. So let's have a look. Yes, it's worked out that the highest score is at 0. I'm just going to change this so you can see. We'll make Adam the highest score with 1001 now. I'll run it again. Okay, and now it's found that the highest score is position 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. So what can I now do with this? Well, if I have a piece of code which will always find me the maximum score in a list, I can now print out something like the maximum had the highest score, this person had the highest score, and then what was their highest score. So I can print name, and then in a square bracket use the index integer I've just created. Now this is an integer because it's just the position. It's found the position of the highest score and it's stored that there, and we can see it's an integer because it printed out just a 3. So I can use that instead of using x, instead of using a number, instead of using n or whatever, I actually use that in the square brackets position. So the position I want you to print out is whatever was found here. Look at name, look up here, and print out for me whatever the max score was, which was then stored in index. I then do had the highest score with, and then I need to do the same again. So I score, but what position do I want? Well, I want whatever the highest score is, so whatever index found here. Let's run this and see if this is working. Invalid syntax. It's not liking something. It's not liking the fact that I've missed a comma. Okay, so here we can see that the program's working. Adam had the highest score with 1001. Let's change it so somebody else now has the highest score. Joe had the highest score with 2005. So we can see how using this line of code will allow us to find the maximum in a list, return the position of that, and then we can use that position in the name and then in the score to print it out. There is another way to do this where we condense everything into one list, which is a 2D array, and that is what we're going to be having a look at next. So if you are quite happy with the previous list tutorial and you're happy with this list tutorial and you understand why we're putting index in these position boxes, then I would suggest you move on to the third list tutorial, which is on the channel now as well. So have a look at that. I hope you got something from that, and let me know if there's anything specific you would like to know about lists. Thank you.